Hello and welcome back. 54 games this week in the NHL, a ton of streaming options up front and in net. So let's not waste any time. Let's just jump right into the schedule. Now, week 9 has a bunch of different opportunities here, and we'll go over it in detail. A ton of teams play 4 times. I'm not going to read them all. You can see them on the left. But the best schedule right now is St. Louis. They play Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's 3 light nights, and then they have the back-to-back on Saturday. So the light nights are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You could maybe count Sunday as a light night, but then you'd have to count Tuesday as well, both with 8 games. So I'm not going to count those as light nights. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday are the light nights this week. Thursday and Saturday are pretty heavy, so you're going to have to find some other options if you have too many guys in your lineup, some start-sit opportunities there. And you can use the Data Draft GPT for some of those. That's what I've been doing in our Discord group. Now, St. Louis plays Vegas twice. So Vegas also has a nice schedule. They've got 2 light night games in the front of the week, and then they've got the Saturday, Sunday. And I'm not going to go through all of these teams, but here's what you can do this week if you want to maximize the schedule. You can see a bunch of teams here play 2 times, either Monday, Wednesday, or there's a couple that play Monday, Tuesday, but we'll focus on the Monday, Wednesdays because they're light nights. So what you could do is you could take any of these teams. You could stream a guy from one of these teams over here, St. Louis, Vegas, Tampa, Dallas, Carolina. There's probably a couple others that have this kind of breakdown, but these are the top teams to pick from right now. And you could stream these guys for Monday and Wednesday. Then you could drop them, and you could pick up somebody from another team who's got a second half of the week backloaded schedule. And there's 2 different ways you could do that. So you could look at Washington, Seattle, Montreal, and Nashville. They have this Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, 2 of those are a little bit heavier, so you may not want that. But the other thing that you could do, Minnesota has a Thursday, Friday, Sunday. So you'd get, if you do have that roster spot available Thursday, you'd get 3 games here and 2 games up front. So a 5-game week out of 1 roster spot. Now you'd have to use 1 or 2 moves there, but you are getting a 5-game week out of whatever roster spot you want to use there. And you could also do that with Columbus as well. They have the same type of thing. And then Nashville at the bottom has, again, this Thursday and Saturday is a little bit heavier compared to this Thursday, Friday, Sunday for these 2 teams. But this is a way that you can play the schedule to get a maximum of 5 games out of 1 roster spot. And there's a number of different teams to pick from. Now, as you can see over here, Vegas with 2 light nights, Tampa with 2 light nights, Dallas and Carolina also with 2. Those are the Monday, Wednesdays up front. So a lot of teams playing the front half that you're going to want from. And then you also have these teams here, 4-game weeks with 1 light night. And then you have a couple here with, not that many light nights or no light nights. Now, there are a number of players that we will get to in the future. But first, let's start off with the best schedules. Let's take a look at St. Louis. Now, I mentioned this last week, and I've been mentioning this to anybody who will listen. Buchnevich was not that owned up a couple weeks ago. He was ice cold. He was coming off of injury. He's rocketed up the boards. Since then, he's now 67% owned, but he should be higher. 8 points in his last 7 games, 2 power play points. He's dual eligible, so he's a must-own in a shallow league. If you're in an 8 or 10-team league, definitely pick up Buchnevich, especially for this week. Now, Robert Thomas, I've been holding on to for 3 or 4 weeks now. And he's been money. So 8 goals, 15 assists, 23 points in 23 games this year, point per game, 57%. He's a single position center, which is not the best, but there's not a whole lot to pick from in terms of St. Louis goal scoring. They've been a pretty good defensive team. The goal scoring has been a little harder to come by. But you do get, a point per game player out of Thomas at 57% owned. That's not bad. Now, their best ad this week is going to be Jake Neighbors, 14% owned, single position left winger, 8 points in his last 8 games. He's line 1 with Buchnevich, and he's power play 1 as well. It is a goal heavy file, which we do seem to like because goals are usually weighted higher than assists in points leagues, but he's not getting a ton of assists, so that is something to just keep in mind. But he's been very productive over the last 2 weeks or so. So his ownership has climbed up to 14%, but he's still probably available in 12-team leagues, 14-team leagues, probably still available depending on your skill level in that league. But he's probably your best ad this week. And if you're looking for a really deep league play, Brandon Saad, 1% owned, single position left wing, 6 points in his last 6 games. Now, before we move on, let's take a look at that scatter plot just to kind of show you a little bit more of what I'm talking about. So as I just mentioned, there's not a lot of guys over here. These would be the elite players putting up a ton of points. You don't have a lot of that in St. Louis. You have Jordan Kyrou, Only 15 points in 23 games, but 3.39 shots per game. So that's what you're getting him for, just shot volume, a couple of power play points, but nothing crazy there. Braden Shen is good for 2 hits per game and 2 shots per game. 14 points in 23 games is not the best, but he is hitting and scoring some points here and there. You also have Robert Thomas, who I mentioned. He is a point per game player. The shot volume's a little bit lower than what you'd like. He's a 69 on the completeness rating, which is pretty good. Then you also have Buchnevich here, 18 points in 21 games. He did get off to a slow start. He's been red hot since that slow start, the last 10 games or so. He's been picking it up. 4 power play goals in that time span, and he's a little bit low on the shot volume, 2.3, but it's not terrible. Then you have Justin Falk. He's been playing decent, not getting the power play production. Torrey Krug, I believe, is getting some of that power play time, and that might be something to take a look at if you're looking for a defenseman. 3 power play points for Torrey Krug, 10 points in 23 games, getting 1.6 blocks per game as well. That's pretty nice. And then you have Jake Neighbors climbing up the boards here. 1.6 hits per game is pretty nice. The shot volume is really low, though. 1.5 shots per game is low, and he's not getting it done on the power play. Only 1 power play goal, 1 power play point on the year. So very goal-heavy file, 9 goals out of his 10 points. So not crazy in terms of assists, but he is red hot right now, so he would be one of the best options. And then you have Colton Parayko, a hits and blocks defenseman, 1.1 hits, 2.1 blocks per game, and a couple of points sprinkled in as well. But that's going to do it for St. Louis. Let's take a look at the Vegas Golden Knights just to see how that's going to shake out. And they are playing St. Louis twice this week. So the obvious ad here is Barbashev, 27% owned, dual position. He just hasn't been doing a lot this year. He's been pretty disappointing. Only 9 points in 25 games, 5 goals, 4 assists. But the reason why you would want him, a goal, 2 assists, 3 points in his last 2 games, line 1 with Eichel and Stone. And more importantly, they're playing St. Louis, his former team, and players love to play against their former teams. So I would imagine if you want one of those guys that's the front half play, and then you drop him on Thursday and you pick up somebody else for the back half, this might be the pickup, is Ivan Barbashev. 27% owned, he's probably there for you in a 12-team league and up. If you're looking for just a blocks defenseman, Braden McNabb. So one thing that we've talked about on the channel before, Vegas loves to block shots. A lot of their guys have a lot of shot blocks. The number 2 and number 3 shot blockers in the NHL are Braden McNabb and Alec Martinez. Martinez is on the IR, so Braden McNabb is the number 2 highest shot blocker in the league behind Jacob Trouba. 3.28 shot blocks per game for McNabb. So if you're just looking for blocks, McNabb would be the pickup there, 45% owned. So people are on to that right now. A couple of deeper league plays. Paul Cotter, he's been a big hitter this season. 2 assists, 11 hits in his last 3 games. He's 8th in the NHL in hits per game. So he is a bangers type of forward. He did have a stretch earlier in the season where he was scoring goals as well. So that is sort of what you're looking for. The floor is the hitting, and then you hope that he adds some offensive production on top of that. And in terms of deep league plays, Michael Amadio might be your best option in terms of offense. 5 points in his last 6 games, getting some power play time, 2 power play points as well. And you'll notice that Vegas does play San Jose. It's the second night of a back-to-back with travel, so that is something to think about in terms of offensive production for that game, but they are playing against the Sharks. The Sharks have been a little bit better, though, so that is something to keep an eye on. But let's take a look at their scatter plot really quick just to see how that relates to compared to the St. Louis scatter plot. So as you can see, they do have an elite forward, and that is Jack Eichel, 83 on the completeness rating, 27 points in 25 games, 4.1 shots per game, and a block per game as well, 8 power play points, 4 power play goals. So he's doing everything for this team, and he is obviously owned up. So you want exposure to him, which is why you're going to target Barbashev. Now, Shea Theodore, I believe, is injured right now. He was quarterbacking that power play, so it's now gone to Pietrangelo. So if he's available, I doubt he is. But Pietrangelo is the power play quarterback right now. Marchessault's pretty much owned up. He's been a consistent goal scorer with some shot volume, 3 shots per game. You also have William Karlsson, who's got 6 power play points. Shot volume a little bit lower at 2.4, but very complete, 75 on the completeness rating. Pietrangelo, as I mentioned, is now the power play quarterback. He's just under 3 blocks per game. So he's a power play guy getting a lot of shot blocks. As I just mentioned, Vegas does that a lot. Mark Stone is probably owned up as well. 21 points in 25 games. It's a little bit underwhelming for him, but he is still playing pretty well. And then Caden Korzak was a guy I talked about earlier in the season. They still have some injuries on the blue line, so he is a pretty decent option. in terms of hits and blocks. 1.54 hits, 1.36 blocks per game. So he's another type of depth option that you could go to. And then there's a couple of other guys. Here's Paul Cotter, a little bit lower in terms of offensive production, 8 points in 25 games, but you're getting 2.96 hits per game, which is why you would own him. And then here's Barbashev down here. So you're looking at these type of players in this area as potential ads, and you kind of have to just think about what you want in terms of category coverage, or if you're looking for somebody hot or whatever. Here's Martinez and Braden McNabb, the two shot blockers. So that's kind of how it shakes out, but you do want that exposure to Jack Eichel because he is elite. Now, there are a couple of other teams that we could talk about, but there's one other team I wanted to talk about just because there's a ton of options that are available on the waiver wire, and that is Columbus. Now, when we talk about Columbus, none of these guys are going to jump off the page because their stats aren't going to be crazy good, but they are scoring a decent amount, Columbus is. They just had a problem up until recently keeping the puck out of their net. Merzlikins has been doing that a lot better. He'll feature in our goalie section this week. But right now for the forward ads, Kirill Marchenko is probably my most desirable pickup here. I've been holding him in one of my leagues for a couple weeks now. Marchenko's 21% owned, single position right wing, 5 points in his last 6 games. He's on that first power play unit. He's in the top 6, and he's a goal scorer. So that's why you would want to target him. A guy I mentioned last week, Dmitry Voronkov, he's been one of those guys who gets some hits, getting some hit volume. Let me pull up his player hub just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. Well, having some technical difficulties, can't pull it up right now, but he's got 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points in his last 3 games, and he's on a 3-game point streak. He's only 2% owned. What I like about him, he drives to the net. So he's a big body, he does hit, he gets to the front of the net, and he puts in those garbage goals. And it seems like that's what their coach is looking for right now. He's been benching guys over the past couple of weeks. It's been getting better, but guys like Laine and Goudreau are not necessarily getting it done. These are the guys that are getting it done. Now, Chinakhov had 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points in his last 3 games. He's only 1% owned, and he's been one of those goal scorers that you can look at pretty much as a streaming option, not necessarily a longer-term hold. I did have him a little bit last year, streaming him in some leagues, and he's also averaging 1 hit per game and 0.7 blocks per game. So a little bit more complete than you would expect out of Chinakhov. And then you also have Kent Johnson, who isn't going to have the best stats. He's not going to look that great in terms of his player hub because he was sent down earlier this year. 6% owned, dual position eligible, 15 points in 10 games when he got sent down to the AHL. And because of that, people might be sleeping on him. He's a very skilled player. He was averaging about a half a point per game last year. Around 42 points, I believe, was where he was kind of falling. And he's incredibly skilled. He might get some power play time. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do. They do use both power play units, which feature Werenski and Provorov on either unit. So there is some opportunities for offense if he gets some power play time. But I just wanted to highlight some of these guys because their ownership is very low. And a lot of these guys are capable of scoring goals and putting up some power play points as well, which is what we like in fantasy. But let's turn now to the skaters that you could potentially pick up this week. And there's a number of them. So this will be a 2-part section, and I'll try to go through them as quickly as I can. But Michael Bunting starts us off, 32% owned, 6 points in his last 6 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, and a power play point. So nothing crazy out of Bunting. He's not one of those high prolific offensive players, and I would have expected some more hits from him as he is that kind of a forechecker, and he's not getting that done, and the shot volume is pretty low. So I'm not necessarily going to pick up Bunting myself, but I just did want to highlight that he is relatively hot right now. Now, speaking of guys that are hot right now and teams that need some depth scoring and they've been getting it, Dallas has been playing really well. That third line with Sagan, and I believe Marchment is still on there, has been really productive. And Marchment has 7 points in his last 6 games, 15 shots, 4 goals, 3 assists. So he's been cranking it up lately. He was a big hitter a couple years ago. It hasn't necessarily come over to Dallas where he's been playing the last 2 years, but the goal production's pretty good. The assists are okay. Shot volume is a little bit low, but lately, those 15 shots in the last 6 games is impressive, and that is a good sign heading in the right direction. He's 5% owned, so he's probably available for you in every league size. Now, a guy that I was talking about pretty much every week last year was Trevor Moore. That Moore-Danault-Arvidsson line was incredibly productive. Arvidsson's been hurt this year, so they've been putting other guys with that, Danault and Moore pairing I believe they had Fiala there, and that kind of boosted his production. He's above a point per game now. But Trevor Moore, 4 goals, 2 assists, 6 points, 1 power play point, 14 shots in his last 4 games. So you're getting elite level goal production out of him right now, 96th percentile, over a half a goal per game, 2.8 shots per game, and he's getting some power play time, 5 power play points on the year. So Trevor Moore has become more of a, last year he was an elite level 12-team streaming option. This year he's kind of a hold. You have to keep him on your roster. I've had him in one of my leagues for the entire season. 57% owned, so he might not be there for you in some deeper leagues, but if you're in a shallow league, he's been getting it done. And LA is a machine. They are one of the best teams in the league, so you do want access to some of those middle 6 guys. Now, in terms of other teams that you would think would be very offensive and you'd want some access there, Alex Holtz playing for the Devils, 4% owned. He's a single position right winger, I believe. Didn't put that in there for whatever reason, but 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points in his last 5 games, averaging 3.6 shots per game over those 5 games, which is a nice improvement from the 1.73 average for the season. So pretty good goal production, 0.32 goals per game, 77th percentile there. He's kind of been a shooter at every level that he's played at, was really productive goal scoring wise in the AHL last year, finally starting to put that together at the NHL level, and everybody in New Jersey seems to be racking up points. They are a very prolific offensive team, and if you're going to get any kind of exposure to Hischier, to Hughes, to any of those top offensive players, if he's getting that second power play unit time, you're going to want exposure there. So he is definitely an option you want to look at. 4% owned. He's available pretty much in every league. And speaking of the Devils, there's not going to be much of a player hub on this player, but it looks really good because it's a 1-game sample size, and that's Simon Nemec. He's gotten called up because Dougie Hamilton goes on IR for an extended period of time. He could be done for the season. Torn pectoral muscles, so that's not good news for the Devils, but that means Nemec comes in. He becomes a first pair defenseman, and he's on power play 2 right now. Luke Hughes still quarterbacking power play 1. 2 assists, a power play point in his first game, so that's why all of these numbers look great. He had 3 shots as well, and he had a hit. So again, very small sample size, but if he is going to get some power play time, you obviously want exposure to the Devils offense. Now, I didn't necessarily mean to do that, and I probably could have featured these guys all together in a Devils slide, but Dawson Mercer, 6 points in his last 6 games, a nice even split, 3 goals, 3 assists, and a power play point. He's dual position eligible. I have him in my face-off league because of that. It doesn't take a ton of draws, but he gets a couple in there, and that boosts my points in that kind of league format. Getting a couple blocks, getting a little bit of power play time, so 3 power play points on the year. And then getting the goal production, not quite as high as Holtz, which is interesting to note because Mercer had a really good rookie season last year. Holtz was kind of up and down. Holtz comes in and he starts to play a little bit better than we expected, and Mercer was a little bit underwhelming to start the year, but he's put it together now. And one of the reasons he was getting that top 6 center role, especially with Hischier and Hughes out, he was getting the number 1 center role, so he was playing against a lot of really good top defensive units and top centers. Now he's slotted where he should be in that middle 6 section of the lineup, and he's getting the power play 2 times. So this could be a nice opportunity for Mercer. Despite the limited ice time compared to what he was getting, the matchups might be better, so this could be an interesting spot. He's 33% owned, so he's probably there for you in 12-team leagues. Now, another guy that I was featuring last week, I pretty much featured him the last 2 weeks, is Gustav Nyquist. 22% owned, single position left winger, 13 points in his last 11 games. So it's not just the last couple days, last couple weeks. It's been going on for a while now with Nyquist. Not a lot of goal production, but the assists are really nice. 92nd percentile there. Shot volume's okay at 2.2 shots per game. And he's getting the power play production. 7 power play points on the year. He's got 4 in his last 11 games. And believe, this is one of those narratives. You have Andrew Brunette coming over to Nashville, and people didn't think they were going to be a good offensive team because of what they had on paper. But Brunette knows what he's doing, and just watching them play the Rangers yesterday, they forecheck really hard. They're constantly applying pressure. They play similar to how the Devils played last year. They just don't have the same personnel. So they are going to be an offensive team, and they did put together a 6-game winning streak. That did get ended, but they are playing much better than they were earlier in the year, and they do need some offense from somebody. Now, Forsberg's dominant. He's been playing incredibly well. O'Reilly's been a point-per-game guy. He's been playing well. And then you get access through to those guys through Gustav Nyquist. He is playing top 6, getting some power play time as well. He's 22% owned, so he's probably there for you in most leagues. But now let's get on to part 2. There's a couple more guys we need to talk about. Now, Oliver Bjorkstrand has been one of those guys who's typically a really good shooter, goal scorer, power play specialist, and he's been getting it done on the power play, 88th percentile there, 8 power play points on the year, 2.6 shots per game is nice, and then about half an assist per game. And he's getting some goal scoring as well. He's got 8 points in his last 9 games, 3 of those on the power play. And the shot volume over those 9 games is higher than his year average. So 3.4 shots per game is encouraging for Bjorkstrand. And they do need him to step up because Schwartz is now out for 6 weeks. So they need somebody to fill that spot. And he would be one of those guys, 36% owned, probably a 12-team streamer. Maybe not available in a 14-team league, but shallower leagues, you might have some better options on the waiver wire. But in a 12-team league, that would be one of the options you could go to from Seattle. Up next, we have Tanner Jeannot, and this is not necessarily the most impressive file offensively, but what you're looking at is his hits per game, 3.44 hits per game. He's upper echelon, 99th percentile in that metric. He's top 10 in the league in hits per game, and he's started to score lately, 3 goals in his last 8 games. He's dual position eligible, unlike Tom Wilson, so he is going to give you a little bit more flexibility. And I believe he's been, kind of getting that net front role. I don't think he's on the power play unit, but he is one of those guys who's always around the net, and he did have a 24-goal season a couple years ago, so he would be kind of a Tom Wilson light. But if you do want that Tom Wilson type, then you could just pick him up if you're in a shallow league. He's 50% owned. Right wing, he got the hat trick last week, 5 goals, 2 power play points, 27 shots, and 18 hits in his last 6 games. That's 4.5 shots per game and 3 hits per game over his last 6, which is incredible. He's one of the few guys that is scoring for the Washington Capitals. Same type of thing, 99th percentile in hits, but he is a healthy amount below Tanner Jeannot. 2.8 hits per game is a lot lower than that 3.44 for Jeannot, but you are getting more goal scoring. So 86th percentile in goals and almost 3 shots per game, 2.95 for Tom Wilson. So you're getting goals, you're getting shots, and you're getting hits from Wilson. You're getting a couple blocks as well, and a little bit of power play production with 3 power play points, and 2 of those came in his last 6 games. So maybe they're going to start to feature him a little bit more on that power play. And a guy up next that I've never thought I would mention on this channel is Mikael Granlund. We were talking about not adding any Sharks for the majority of the season so far, but this has to be brought up, and pretty much everybody, in fact, everybody from this point down only plays 3 games this week. So up above Tom Wilson and up, those are all 4-game weeks. Down here, these are all 3-game weeks, so that is something to note. But Granlund, 2 goals, 5 assists, 2 power play points, 15 shots, and somehow 14 hits in his last 7 games. That is extremely uncharacteristic for Granlund. He's now 1.35 hits per game average for the season, which again is very uncharacteristic for him. Shot volume is pretty low, but he is getting some power play time and is getting assists as well. So if you're looking for some Shark ads, I would personally like Duclair a little bit better. I just picked him up for today's game. Obviously, Thomas Hertl is one of those guys that you want to pick up from San Jose, but in a deeper league, Mikael Granlund, he is hot right now. Maybe that's something that you want to keep in mind if you're in one of those deep leagues. Now, if you're in one of those deep leagues, another guy you could look at as a power play quarterback is Cam York. So Philly's power play has been atrocious. They're very good defensively. Their offense is okay, but their power play has been bad, really bad. Bottom 5 in the league for most of the season. And Sanheim was the power play quarterback there. And now they're starting to feature Cam York on power play 1. And he's got 2 power play points in his last 7 games. So 5 points in his last 7, 2.28 blocks per game in his last 7. And that would, these are a little bit lower on the hub. The 1.63 shots per game, I believe that's coming up lately. The blocks are nice, 1.71 blocks. And the offensive production for a defenseman is not bad either. 3 goals on the year. He's a very skilled defenseman. He's only 2% owned. And now that he's on that power play 1, that's where you'd want to maybe jump in and scoop him up and see if they can improve this power play at all, because this is a team that's giving some other guys opportunities quarterbacking that power play unit. And if you need one of those power play quarterback defensemen, there's not a lot of them left. You could go with Nemec. You could go Cam York. York is PP1. Nemec is PP2. Now, one thing that I heard from our resident Mighty Duck fan, Mighty Duck Mark, is that the Ducks are back to sucking, and I looked at John Gibson's stats. He's only got 1 win in his last 6 or 7 starts, so that does seem to be the case. But Alex Killorn's playing pretty well right now. 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points, 2 on the power play, and 23 shots in his last 7 games. That's 3.28 shots per game, which is a little bit higher than his season-long average of 2.36. He's getting some power play production, 3 power play points on the year. He's never been a longer-term hold in fantasy. Even when he was with Tampa Bay, he was a streaming option in a 12-team league. He is dual eligible. He's 18% owned, so he's probably there for you in a 12-team league. And the only reason that I'm suggesting him is that he is hot and the shot volume is there right now. This is a 3-game week. All of these guys are 3-game weeks, so keep that in the back of your mind. And last but not least, let's take a look at a guy that a lot of you were holding on to for, from the draft season until now, and that's Sam Bennett. We're kind of waiting for him to come around offensively, and it's started to come a little bit. 2 goals, an assist, 2 power play points in his last 4 games, 2.75 shots per game, and 2.25 hits per game in that 4-game stretch. So the hits is why you would want him. He's a hitter, likes to bang bodies on the forecheck, and he does score some points. He gets, usually kind of a little bit higher than this. The assists are very low right now. The goals are okay. They're not crazy. 3 goals on the season. In a very small sample size, I must say, in only 12 games, but he is starting to find his game after being out for the first chunk of the season. And if, I did not expect to see him at 18% owned. So if he's available in your league, you might want to get out in front of it. Matthew Tkachuk is a buy low candidate right now. I was doing a video on that, trying to put it together. Didn't have the time to actually record the video, but Matthew Tkachuk is one of those buy low candidates shooting 2 or 3% right now, and he could potentially explode. And you want exposure to guys who are going to play with him or around him or benefit from that boost in scoring when it comes. And Bennett is one of those guys that might actually benefit from that because of the fact that he's 18% owned, and I did not expect to see that right now. But that's going to do it for the forwards. Next, let's take a look at some of the goalie streaming options for Week 9. Just like we did last week, we're going to go over some of the guys that are trending in the right direction and that I can't believe some of these guys' ownership is this low. We'll start it off with Phoenix Copley, who was absolutely terrible to start the season. So a lot of these numbers you see on his hub are pretty bad. 868 save percentage, 310 goals against isn't terrible, all things considered. He is below expected, but you want him for this team exposure. 94th percentile in team defense in terms of expected goals against per game. And in the last couple games that he's played, last 2 starts, he's got a shutout, 980 save percentage, 0.5 goals against. So he is starting to play kind of in the same realm of, category or level as Cam Talbot, who's been one of the best goaltenders. You can see Cam Talbot over here, the second best goalie on the goalie hub, partially because of that team exposure, but also because he's been very prolific in terms of his metrics above expected, 8.5 above expected for Cam Talbot, 928 save percentage, 2.0 goals against. So if you can get any kind of performance like that out of Phoenix Copley at 10% ownership, now would be the time to jump on that. Now, another guy that you might be able to pick up, and I've been getting a bunch of questions about the Detroit goaltending situation. It is a tricky situation because of the fact that they have 3 guys in net right now, Reimer and Husso and Lyon. But Lyon has been playing out of his mind. So 3 wins in his last 3 starts, a shutout, 978 save percentage. On the year, it's been pretty good. Those are the only starts he's had all year. 958 save percentage, 1.3 goals against. He's 6.3 above expected, so playing really well. And Detroit has been a pretty decent team this year as well. Their defense is about mid-pack, 52nd percentile, I should say. But he's one of those guys where if you see him starting, you go and you try to grab him. People have been doing that already, so he's 27% owned. He might not be available for you. And if you're looking for somebody in that percentage range, Charlie Lindgren is a better option. So just showing you here Charlie Lindgren's numbers: 7 starts, 5 wins, 2.3 goals against, 934 save percentage, and a shutout. He's 3rd in the NHL in goals saved above expected, 96th percentile there. The team defense is pretty good as well, 79th percentile. For whatever reason, Darcy Kemper has not benefited from that yet. He's not been playing all that well. You can see, I don't even know if he's on, he's down here at a 55. You're looking at a 69 for Charlie Lindgren. So he's been the much better goaltender 2.3 goals against, 934 save percentage on the year is really impressive. And if they're going to start, keep giving him starts, you're going to want to add him. He could be a potential 1A at that point. And at 24% owned, he's definitely a value option if you're looking for a starting goaltender. A lot of people have had some trouble with some starters this year, so this would be a different kind of option as a 1B that's turned into a 1A. Now, another starter that's been playing a lot better lately, I guess, Elvis Merzlikins. 3 wins in his last 5 starts, 2.42 goals against, and a 937 save percentage. That brings up his season-long number to a 911 save percentage, 3.1 goals against. He's slightly above expected, which is impressive because their team defense is atrocious. So 6th percentile in team defense. So you're not going to want to target them for that, coverage, that, exposure to that team. But one thing that they're not necessarily playing that well defensively, they are giving him some run support. So he is getting the wins. If you're in a points league with wins and potentially total saves, because his save volume is off the charts, 97th percentile. So if you're in a points league with total saves and wins as heavily weighted categories, that's where you would want to target Merzlikins. He's 39% owned. Now, the best option that you could probably get right now is Connor Ingram. You can see him here up at the top of the board. So he is 7th in the league, just counted off the top of my head there. So 10.1 above expected, 95th percentile. Really, really good all season long. He's 4th in goals saved above expected this year. 10-3 record, 925 save percentage, the 2.4 goals against. Those are all numbers that you're going to want in a categories league, in a points league, any kind of league format. He's been killing it. He's taken the number 1 spot from Vejmelka. Vejmelka has had a terrible week last year. I believe he was a sub 700 save percentage in his last start. So not great if you own Vejmelka. If you do have the opportunity to get Ingram, if you're in a shallow league, he is one of the best goaltenders right now. So I would jump on that for the time being. He's probably not available in a 12-team league. Definitely not available in a 14-team league, but 8 and 10-team leagues, if he's available, he's been getting it done on a nightly basis. Now, speaking of, we've been talking a lot about team exposure, and this is a guy that I was not recommending for a big chunk of the season because he was terrible, and that's Sam Ersson, and I can't find him. Here he is. So Ersson, got to uncheck this. He's been getting it done lately. 3 wins in his last 3 games. He's got a shutout in there, and he's giving you that exposure to Philadelphia. They are first in the NHL in expected goals against per game at 2.67. So that team defense is basically what we were seeing out of Carolina last year, out of some of those elite teams that you just kind of wanted, whoever they had in net. And for whatever reason, both him and Carter Hart are below expected, but it doesn't seem to matter because they are winning games because of this team defense. Now, if they can get that power play fixed, this will become an even better option because that power play will help them win even more games and give them a little bit more run support. But right now, last 3 games, a 937 save percentage, a 1.58 goals against. You can see the season-long numbers are not that impressive at an 885 save percentage, but even with that, the 2.8 goals against on the year is not bad because of that team defense. He does have that shutout, and they don't give up a ton of shots. You can see 32nd percentile in total saves, which is good if you're in a categories league. Again, sort of the opposite as Merzlikins, where you do want that shot volume. If you're in a categories league, he's been playing much, much better. He's 3% owned, so he's available in pretty much every single league's size and format. So this would be a streaming play, not necessarily a longer-term play because they are going to play Carter Hart. But if you see him starting, he would be a decent option because of that team defense exposure. And last but not least, I've been getting a ton of questions about the Carolina goaltending situation. We have no idea when Anderson's going to be back. Ranta has been unownable up to this point. So Kochetkov has been taking the net and running with it. 3 wins in his last 4 starts, 2.47 goals against, the 869 save percentage. The reason there's an asterisk there, he had a terrible game against the Islanders where that brought down all of his numbers. If you take that game out, he's at a 929 over his last 3 games without that one included. So he's not necessarily been great to start the year. You can see on his hub, he's only a 44. The 2.8 goals against is nice. You're getting that because of that team defense being 91st percentile. He is below expected, and the save percentage has been bad, but it's getting better lately at that 929 without that one bad game in there. He's not necessarily the best option right now. There are some other guys that are lower percentage owned that are playing better. Guys like Lindgren, Alex Lyon's been playing better. Copley would be a decent option. But if you want that exposure to Carolina, and they do have a 4-game week this week, so he will get some time, Kochetkov would be a decent option. And as we know from last year, he was a top 15 goalie in fantasy when he was playing. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you got some good information out of this. I tried to cram as much as I could into this video. It still went pretty long. Apologize about that, but that's what happens when you have a ton of teams playing 4 times this week. Let me know how you're doing in the comments section below. I'll try to get to it as soon as I can. It's been a crazy first chunk of this season so far, trying to keep track of everything. I'm trying to update a number of different hubs and the GPT that you can access in the description below. So let me know how you're doing in the comments section below, but that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one.